Welcome, everybody. Welcome again to the Corfa and Refuge Association webinar series. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about intern opportunities for Friends, and we've got two really great speakers with us. We've got Ellen Bly and Jen Lehman from the ACE intern program. Ellen is the division director, and Jen is the national director of the EPIC program. And we are excited to hear about what kind of opportunities and what kind of things we should think about when Friends consider using interns. And with that, I will turn it over to Ellen and Jen.
Thank you. Ellen, do you want to share your screen? My name's Jen Lehman.
Oh, wait, before you get started on that, I did want to say thanks to everybody for coming, and also recognize a few of our members that are attending as well. I see Jeff Haskett is on there, and I see Marco is on. Those are folks from the Refuge Association. We also have Eden Taylor, our magician behind the scenes. And from the Corfa board, we have Cheryl Hart and Joan Patterson. I just wanted to acknowledge those folks for attending. Thanks everybody for attending today. Sorry, Jen.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Well, hi everyone. My name is Jen Lehman. As Sue said, I'm the National Director of American Conservation Experience's EPIC program. EPIC stands for Emerging Professionals in Conservation, and that's what we call our individual placement or internship program. The federal partners don't love the word intern, so we like to use individual placements, but just know when we say that today, it means intern as well. Ellen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. So yeah, I'm Ellen. I'm the division director of our ACE EPIC Fish and Wildlife Service division. So I work with most of our Fish and Wildlife Service partners, as well as members working adjacent to Fish and Wildlife Service refuges and lands. I'm based in Salt Lake City. Been working for ACE about 6.5 years now. Started as an intern back in 2017 and just fell in love with the core world and especially the Fish and Wildlife Service. So yeah, I mostly provide oversight to our team in setting up projects and agreements all over the country.
And I've been with ACE for about 2 years now, but I've been in the conservation core world for about 10 years. So Ellen's our resident expert on Fish and Wildlife Service. And I oversee, we have a couple other divisions that work with our different federal partners too. So our presentation flow today is we have a couple of different sections. Please feel free to put questions in the chat. I know that they're going to be monitoring that. We'll stop at the end of each section to look at the questions and see if we can answer something right then to help clarify anything, but we also will have plenty of time at the end as well. So just keep that going. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about ACE, considerations for you all for hiring youth members, current and past projects we've had with Friends groups, the contract and hiring process, how it works with us, and some cost estimates that we can give you to show you kind of what it looks like to partner with ACE and host an intern through us. Now, I know that you have a lot of different choices to make out there. There's a lot of conservation corps out there. A lot of the things we're going to talk about is probably at a high level, pretty much the same across various conservation corps, but some of this is very internal to ACE and how we work. So I do encourage you to reach out to us after this if you're interested in talking to us, and also to reach out to other conservation corps too and get a sense of how they work and what their specialties are to help you meet your needs. So a little bit about ACE. We are entering our 20th year this year. Happy birthday, ACE. We are a 501c nonprofit. We partner with many federal, state, and non-governmental land management agencies across the country and in territories. Our mission is to develop and support young professionals, and also our partners with integral resource management challenges. We're mainly going to talk about our EPIC program today, which is where Ellen and I work, which is our intern program. We also have a crew program, though. we decided to focus on Epic because that's what we work on, but also Crew program can be, it's a residential program. We have 4 different sites across the country. It can be a really great option for large scale projects. It's a typically more expensive partnership opportunity. So that's why we thought we'd start with Epic today, but we can talk to you about Crew at the end as well. Our mission is to provide rewarding environmental service opportunities for young adults and emerging professionals of all backgrounds to explore and improve public lands while gaining practical professional experience. At ACE, we like to say that our vision is to be the partner of choice to our partners, the program of choice to our members, and the employer of choice to our staff. So we have those 3 pillars that really drive our work here. We value quality, inclusion, professional development, stewardship, and we consider ourselves partner immersed. We are very responsive to our partners, and we really do care about the kind of work that you need to get done and finding the best solutions to help that happen. You can find out more, there's our link right here, and all of the hot links that you see on this presentation, when we make a PDF and send it out afterwards, they will be live and you can click into them. So don't worry about missing any links.
So we do partner with AmeriCorps for some of our projects. The AmeriCorps program is a national service initiative that was initiated in 1993. There's only over 50,000 AmeriCorps members serving nationwide each year. Many are on environmental projects and conservation-based projects with Corps like us. There's also other service-based projects. The benefit of the AmeriCorps program is that it provides kind of community for members beyond just what ACE and Fish and Wildlife or Friends organizations can offer, but members who participate in AmeriCorps receive a grant at the end of their term called the Seagull Education Award. They can use that money to help pay off student loans, to take future college courses, take professional development type courses, that kind of thing. And that grant money does not come out of ACE's budget or the budget of the partner that we're working with to put on a particular position. There are a few restrictions to the AmeriCorps program, so it's not appropriate for all types of positions that we do, mainly not appropriate for positions that handle money or are heavy on maintenance duties, but we can talk more specifics about that when it comes to specific project types. It's generally a benefit for members to be involved in the AmeriCorps program.
Any questions before we move on? I haven't looked at the chat. I don't think we have anything yet. So, what does it look like to host an ACE Epic member as a friends group? So we have some expectations of our site leads, our sites. So that would be you as the site lead. Just as you would support and encourage any entry-level staff member at your organization, you want to think of our ACE members as needing the same kind of care and tending. Typically, they have a little bit of work experience. We tend to have some of our members tend to trend a little older maybe than some of our other Conservation Corps peers. A lot of them have their degree already, or they're almost finished with their degree or an advanced degree. We tailor our recruiting based on our partners' needs. So if you need somebody with that sort of very specific background, we can do that. But they're still young. They still haven't had a lot of work experience, and they're still going to need that mentorship. And that's like a two-way partnership. You have an ACE site contact who's their mentor as well as their supervisor. And then you ask our partners to act as that mentor too. So communication is our number one. That's where everything can kind of run off the rails with poor communication, miscommunication, or not enough communication. There's no reason to not reach out and talk to us about anything. Clear and consistent communication is key to our members' success, and it's key to your project's success as well. There's a lot of expectations that you have and our members have, and there's a lot of successes and challenges that will happen during any member service. So we want to hear about them, and we want to mitigate any issues that are happening. Day-to-day supervision for the members once they're recruited and hired is on our on-site staff from the Fish and Wildlife Service or the Friends group who is hiring them. And then ACE provides all the administrative support in the background. It can be sometimes confusing on who to go to for what, and we try to work really hard with our members to get them to understand that before they go into the field. And that's something that we want to make sure you understand as well. Professional development, that's another really important thing that we ask our partners to do with the members. That can look like a lot of different things. We have some remote professional development opportunities. We have a learning portal, and we run webinars similar to this for our members all the time. But the best professional development opportunities are often hands-on and taught by someone who's in the work. So that's you. It can be as low lift as letting them job shadow you on some sort of task that's not something that they do every day. It can be a certain project or process. It could be inviting members to attend meetings with you, even if they're there to take notes. That's still a learning opportunity. Participate in trainings you already have scheduled. And then we'll talk to our site, our ACE staff supervisors will talk to the members too about professional development goals that they have, and where we'll try to point them in the right direction as well. Okay.
All right.
We got a question. Oh, yep, here we go. Admin support.
Yeah, very timely question in the chat there. So I'm going to dig in a little bit more to the administrative support that we provide. So kind of the main areas are going to be in the recruitment and selection of members into positions, onboarding and enrollment, and some of the administrative pieces that go with that, payroll throughout the course of their term, and liability insurance and workers' comp coverage. So first is a little just overview of some of the benefits that we provide both to our members and to our partners. So the ACE supervisor, oftentimes their title will be member manager, will kind of lead the charge on recruitment and onboarding. After working with you and the Fish and Wildlife Service staff that at your particular stations, to create a position description and lining out the duties and an idea for the position, the ACE supervisor will post the position and do the recruitment and onboarding. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. So they'll also conduct beginning, middle, and end of term check-ins with the member to make sure everything's going well, ensure they're getting the support they need, both from ACE and from their site, and really make sure they're getting a wholesome experience and a all-around good experience at the site. And then the ACE supervisor is kind of the one point of contact to discuss concerns with at any point. That's coming from either the site lead or the member. They would be the lead in that case. As far as health and safety, we provide workers' comp and liability coverage in case of a member getting injured on the job. There's also an employee assistance program and other self-care resources we offer for free to members. Members also receive SNAP benefits, depending on their income level within the position. As Jen mentioned, we have a member portal with different professional development resources, different online trainings, and units on pretty much any topic across the board that ACE members are working on. We also provide a uniform for members. We have a few different packages that will kind of depend on the type of work that they're doing. They get pro deals on outdoor gear, and then they're highlighted on different social media outlets. We try to do blog posts and things like that as well. So a little bit more about the recruitment and selection process. Like I said, developing the position announcements is collaborative between staff at ACE and partner staff. Oftentimes, even with Friends agreements, the Fish and Wildlife Service staff who may be providing some of the day-to-day support for that member will be involved in shaping this position description. After that is developed, posting and outreach occurs. So we post everything on the ACE website, as well as a few other job boards that we have access to. Kind of timeline for recruitment can depend how long we leave the position up. Really depends on how much interest we're getting. Sometimes we get a lot of candidates really fast. Sometimes we need to let it ride for a little while longer and do some extra outreach to make sure these positions reach the right folks. The ACE point of contact will do an initial review of applicants and send sort of a top candidates folder to the partners for your review. And after that, we would conduct interviews and select a candidate. And ultimate selection of candidate is up to you all. You know, we can provide recommendations and help throughout the process, but we leave the final decision up to you. We can also work with pre-selected candidates. That is essentially if you have someone in mind for a position when you're initiating that contract with us, we don't have to do a full-on recruitment. We can hire somebody into the role if you have a candidate in mind already. Typically, if we're starting from scratch on recruitment, we like to allow at least eight weeks from the day that we post the position to the day that you want a member to start. That makes sure that we have enough time to be mindful about the selection, conduct interviews, and do a lot of that outreach. But sometimes, you know, that timeline can be shorter or longer depending on the position, location, and need for project. Once a candidate is selected, we'll connect that new member with their ACE and agency partners, or in this case, you know, Friends group partners, via a welcome email. That welcome email will include all of the information they need to get enrolled, all of kind of their tax forms, enrollment paperwork. We initiate a criminal history check as well as a driver check for positions that will be driving ACE or government or Friends vehicles. There's a few extra enrollment steps for AmeriCorps positions. Their background check process is a little bit more stringent and tends to take a little bit longer, but it's more or less the same. We also send them a uniform package. We have a virtual program overview and orientation that they would attend within their first month on the job to help them understand the resources that are available to them. If there is a need for a member to be federally backgrounded or have a federal background check or get a PIV card or different kind of clearance levels on the Fish and Wildlife Service side, that would have to be initiated by the Fish and Wildlife Service. We don't have a whole lot of control over those systems. Next will be leave policies and pay. We're very flexible in kind of both of these categories. There isn't a set amount of time off built into any ACE position necessarily. We really encourage that on federal holidays, if the rest of the staff is not going to be around, we encourage that you also let the ACE member have the day off. But we ask that any time off for ACE members, we have them collaborate with their site leads first and then talk with their ACE supervisor about what the game plan is. Generally, we don't pay per hour. So if a member logs hours within a week, even if it's not their standard number of hours, we're going to pay them their full weekly living allowance, unless we discuss that explicitly ahead of time with you all. That's another area where the AmeriCorps program is particularly strict, that we need to keep their living allowance consistent, even if they aren't always working the same number of hours in a week. Anytime there's performance concerns or a need for disciplinary action with an ACE member, that's really going to be a time that communication becomes extremely important, and collaboration with the ACE point of contact is necessary. when there are problems brought to us from either the member or the site partner, we try to have meetings with both of those folks to discuss the issue, create a plan of action, and follow up regularly. Certainly the steps of disciplinary action will vary pretty greatly depending on the situation, but we try to stay on top of those kinds of things and get out ahead of it. It's always a bummer to hear, well, this member's been underperforming for months and we're just now telling you this because we want to fire them. That's no fun. We want to try to get out ahead of that. The last thing would be workers' compensation and liability insurance. To talk about this, I'm going to hand it off to you, Jen, to go through that.
Ellen. So ACE is a pretty big organization. We maintain all your typical general liability insurance that cover our members in case of injury or property damage, both their own property, their property, your property, federal government property. We provide workers' compensation coverage to all of our members and staff. They're not covered for workers' comp if they get injured on off time, and that is kind of an interesting, sometimes gray area that the adjusters take care of that. We don't. We just file and we make sure that our members are taken care of. If someone is injured while on the job, we can work with you to find. Your member manager or ACE point of contact would want to work with the partner to find some alternate work, maybe work if they can't come in or be in the field, or something that's more desk oriented if they're not mobile for a couple of days. We try to keep the members working unless something's very serious happens, because it's better for them to continue on in their position, and it's better for you too. None of our, no nonprofit partner, no friends group will be required to cover ACE members under any of your insurances. ACE staff are responsible for reporting any incident that happens in the field and provide that support for our members. I'll tell you, because you will be the first point of contact for that member, most likely, if they are injured or having an issue. This is where the communication comes into play. Making sure that we're involved from the beginning is key, so that we can make sure that everybody is covered and is healing or recovering properly. Members and partners are responsible for developing their own emergency response plans relevant to their assignments. That could be one plan because their day-to-day work won't change much and they're going to be reporting to the same location and doing basically the same thing every day. It could be day-to-day though, if they're moving around a lot. So really taking that time to work with the member to look at safety considerations, especially if there's going to be driving involved. And we can work with you on that. It's definitely for the first time partner. We can provide some guidance on how to do that. And then one thing I want to make sure that I call out for all of you is that we do require our nonprofit partners who are hosting ACE members to carry directors and officers insurance. I know that can be it typically not a terribly costly investment, but it is something that will protect you and your board. Should a member, something weird happens and they decide to sue all of us, we don't want you to be caught up in that without protection. Any questions on that before we move on? I know that's a meaty slide. Okay.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the types of projects that can be done and that have been done, especially with friends groups. So the project types that ACE members can do are really quite varied and flexible. Jen spoke a little bit earlier to the crew and individual placement models. I think in most cases, our past work with friends group has been following the individual placement model, but we do have a few crews that have worked with friends groups over the years. So field location can also vary by a lot. I know, many friends groups are associated with one specific refuge or complex of refuges. And for many of the projects that we have or that we could do, we would probably be relying both on friends groups members and Fish and Wildlife Service staff to help shape this experience for a potential project. So we've had members working on refuges in regional offices, in DC level offices, and at hatcheries. There's not a whole lot of restriction as to where ACE members can work. We just want to make sure we have it well fleshed out prior to putting a member on the ground. Again, we're seeking to provide meaningful experience and mentorship for young professionals starting their conservation career. So if you're considering, bringing in a member to, or an ACE member to do a particular project or work, consider how they would be supported on the ground, whether that be by members of a friends group or by Fish and Wildlife Service staff or other organizations. We do provide our members driver training, and it's the same training that government employees get, so they are eligible to drive government vehicles. We can also work rental vehicles or ACE fleet vehicles into agreements if a vehicle is needed but not able to be provided on site. To be able to drive, though, ACE members do need to be at least 21 years old. Yeah, I think the main emphasis when it comes to thinking about types of projects that members can do is that we can be flexible. We want to work with you to meet the need and to provide a meaningful experience for the person coming into the job. So our individual placements are typically paid $500 to $900 a week. I mentioned earlier that we generally don't pay members by the hour. We provide a weekly living allowance that is set by you all, the project partners. We can certainly help you decide what an appropriate living allowance would be, but oftentimes it comes down to position type, budget, length of term, whether or not there's housing provided to that member, what the cost of that housing would be, and a few other considerations. Generally, EPIC members can work any amount of time from 10 weeks to 2 years. We don't really have sideboards on that. And then housing, it can be provided on site, or you can make it the responsibility of the person hired to find housing in the local area for that position. If housing is not provided, we do encourage that you consider, the cost of living in an area and making sure that the living allowance provided to them would be enough that they could secure housing in the area. So I'm going to talk through a few different examples of projects that we have had with friends groups in the past. So currently we have a member working with the Friends of Black Bayou. This ACE member was actually previously a DFP member who finished their 11-week DFP term, and there was still work that could have been done on this history project she was working on. So she works kind of a part-time schedule to document oral history from local community members surrounding, I think it's primarily focused on a particular cemetery and the folks that are buried there and their still living family. So that's kind of a part-time position. We've worked with the Friends of Parker River to provide a member that was doing general biology support and different monitoring projects. That position was actually partially funded by a federal agreement with the Fish and Wildlife Service and partially funded by their friends group. So the member, I don't remember the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but they had a term that was, maybe 6 months long, and 4 months of it were funded by a federal agreement, and 2 months of the position were funded by the friends group. We also worked with the Louisiana Wildlife Refuges and the Friends of Louisiana Wildlife Refuges. The two members there provided support to their hunt program, different events that happened on the refuges, and biological surveys. We did that in 2021, 2022. We worked with the Save Our Bosque Task Force in New Mexico as well. That was an example of a multi-year combined crew and individual placement-based agreements. So we had ACE crews that came in to do a lot of invasive species removal, wherein the individual placement members did a lot of monitoring, mapping, kind of keeping an eye on the work that the crews had done and helping to identify priority areas for crews to come in the future. We've also had crew work with Friends of the Dunes in Humboldt Bay. A 6-person crew worked to treat European beach grass on 15 acres of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service land. So yeah, we kind of have a wide range of types of projects that we've had folks working on. I think in all of these cases, particularly with the individual placements, the day-to-day support really relied heavily on the Fish and Wildlife Service and Refuge staff. You know, I know most Friends groups are volunteer-based, and you know, you all provide a lot, and it would be hard to support an intern day-to-day, especially when the work is often centered around Fish and Wildlife Service priorities and refuge priorities. So if you're thinking about wanting to get an intern, I'd encourage that you talk to refuge staff or hatchery staff or Fish and Wildlife staff at your station to see what their capacity is to be able to support this member in addition to you all. Okay, any questions on project types before I start getting into kind of the budget and contract piece of it? Okay. So yeah, if you are interested in potentially having an ACE member, the first step would be to reach out to myself or Jen. We like to kind of have individual calls with folks to talk through specific needs and help work up a cost estimate that's based on your specific scope of work. And again, we can help develop that. We can help provide examples of other work ACE members are doing to help you kind of shape that scope if this is something you're considering. Once a scope and a budget is decided on, we can just draw up a contract. That contract, we have kind of a template that we can use, but we've also, you know, we know that you all have your own processes sometimes, so we can work together to come up with a contract with contract language that works for all parties involved. Once that contract is signed, then we can get going on posting that position and recruiting. As far as billing for the work, we send invoices monthly after work is done. So, you know, we invoice for the prior month, and those can be paid via electronic transfer or check. And then here's some just very general cost examples. As I said earlier, you know, specific costs and all of that can vary slightly depending on the type of work that's happening, where that work is happening, how long it's going to be going on, how much a member is being paid, whether there's supplemental budget items for a member to travel or to get supplies, and how many members are on that. But these two cost estimates I have here are pretty typical, and you know, you could use this as a ballpark estimate. So a member making, you know, $700 a week and working for 6 months would be about $30,000. A member making a little bit lower of a living allowance, maybe housing is provided by Fish and Wildlife in this case, for a shorter amount of time would be about $16,500. And that's all we've got. We've got a few of these resources linked here that will be shared when the slide deck goes out. So partner handbook, member handbook, an AmeriCorps host site agreement, as well as a link to our website. And then Jen and I's contact information is listed here if you have any follow-up questions or want to consider this further. But anybody have any questions? I see the question in the chat. Does ACE take care of W-2s and 1099? Yes, we do. That's part of our payroll process and enrollment. They'll fill out their tax forms when we enroll them, and then we send out the tax forms at the end of the year.
So Ellen, I have a question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I was just going to say, since we're at the end of the presentation, if people want to just raise their hands instead of putting it in the chat, we can do that as well.
Okay.
And for that, maybe we want to stop sharing the screen so we can see hands a little bit more readily. Great, thank you.
So the full expense of the position and ACE overhead is carried by the partner, yes. We currently, ACE does not apply for any grants or anything like that to help supplement any work with nonprofits or our federal partner agencies, but we can. One thing that I think has always been a really nice, in my previous role at another conservation corps, we would often work with smaller friends groups who were able to apply and had a better relationship with their local funding community, and we could apply with them as a partner. Sometimes we can even, we'll provide language. It's best for us not to take the lead on that application. I think it always works better for the local nonprofit to do that. We would be happy to work with you if that's a funding consideration. We've got stock language we can shoot over at any point if you are interested in partnering with us and need to write a grant for it.
Trying to figure out how to turn my hand on. I have a question. So we talked a little bit about having friends groups and help out in the visitor center. So we have a number of visitor centers across the country, and friends tend to lead the charge on visitors, but I know there's some restrictions with that. So would you guys mind talking a little bit about the exchange of friends working in visitor centers? I know with AmeriCorps, it kind of limits some of the restrictions. It limits what they can and can't do.
Yeah, really, it would just be the AmeriCorps program that would be the restriction there. And we do a lot of positions that aren't AmeriCorps positions for pretty much this exact reason. So AmeriCorps kind of has a hard stop at any sort of money handling. Money handling cannot be a part of a member's duties if they're going to be an AmeriCorps member. Okay. But it certainly can be if they're not AmeriCorps. So yeah, really not a
okay.
problem.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a restriction. Yeah. Joan, did you have a question?
Yeah. So so if someone is interested in working with you, how far in advance of when they want that intern to start should they contact you? In order to get the job description and everything else in place?
Ideally, 12 weeks would be good.
12 weeks.
We can certainly rush through things if we need to, but generally it's better to have time if possible. Yeah, if we're doing a full recruitment starting from scratch, that usually takes, at least 8 weeks from the date of posting to the boots on the ground day. And then on top of that, we'd want to build in a little bit of extra time for working out the contract, creating the position description, and ironing out the scope.
Okay, thank you. And I see a question in the chat of, do you have a recommended wage range?
That's kind of a tough question to answer because it really can depend on a few different factors. I'd say the biggest things to consider when thinking about, appropriate wage for a position would be location of the position and cost of living in that place, and whether or not housing is provided. So I encourage that for positions that housing is not provided, that the weekly pay is at least $600 a week. You know, if housing is provided, or if the position is a longer term AmeriCorps member, you know, you could probably justify going a little bit lower, but we do see a pretty direct correlation of, you know, higher living allowance gets more candidates applying, and generally higher caliber candidates with more experience.
You have your hand up. Do you want to take yourself off mute and ask your question?
Yes. I wondered if any of the interns work in the communications that Friends would do, if they're, you know, on our newsletters or our website, and if so, could some of that be remote work? Is that something that they would like?
Yeah. We have a few, I don't know that we have any specifically working with Friends groups on communications right now, but we certainly have ACE members working with refuges on their social media platforms and newsletters. I think a really good example of that is the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge. If you check out some of their stuff, that's an ACE intern running a lot of their postings. And so, yeah, that's something that we have ACE members doing a lot. We're seeing a big desire for remote work. I think that's workplace wide. That's not just ACE. That's not just this industry. Folks are really enjoying the potential for remote work. So yeah, we can support that.
And we have a question from Karen at Patuxent. Where do you typically post the positions? And Jen, thank you for putting your website in the chat.
So these are our EPIC opportunities. If you go to our website in general and go up to the top and it says apply here, you can see it pops down serve with EPIC, serve with crew, and then we have our staff jobs and crew leader openings. So they are separated out. So because we tend to find typically people looking for crew opportunities are not always looking for EPIC and vice versa. It's a sort of different applicant, different kind of member. But I would say, you know, anything that gets posted on our website then gets aggregated out to Indeed, and where else does it go out to?
Texas A&M job board, conservation job board. I'm missing a big one, but I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. The Handshake platform usually goes out to that. And then we can do specialized postings as well. I know we often, there's some affinity group job boards that we'll post to. So yeah, it can depend. If there's localized job boards or places to post, we'll do that. We oftentimes will share it on our social media or on ACE's social media platforms. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We do kind of job roundups on those outlets as well.
So Janelle posted a question in the chat box. What is the percent of overhead? For example, if I pay our technician $625 a week for 12 weeks, that's $7,500 for our program. How much higher might we expect the totals to look like?
Yeah, so our current, we negotiate a rate every year with DOI, and that's kind of our framework for all of our agreements for what our overhead costs are. So our current rate with DOI is 25.4%, I think. So that's ballpark what it'll be. There's some cases where we'll drop a little bit below that if, you know, depending on a few different scope type things, but 25% is good ballpark to work with.
But just Janelle, just so you know, and others too, there are other expenses when partnering with ACE besides just the wages that the members get too. So there's a couple different line items that you'll see built into a budget, and it's not just you know, you can't, unfortunately you can't just multiply by hours and then add 25%. It really depends, and this is where it gets tricky with presenting to you know, a larger group. It really does get down to, working with that individual partner and what the needs are and what we have to build in, whether, different kind of uniform, some extra gear that needs to happen because of the project. If there's transportation, we need to build in some rentals or different kinds of things. So it's hard to give you like this is what it is until we work with you individually.
Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat or any hands raised. And Jen, thank you very much for that additional information about expenses.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would encourage you to take a look at the Epic Opportunities page to get a sense of what kind of positions are out there right now. We've got everything from NPS, BLM, Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife, and nonprofits out there. We work with California Parks a lot and some other nonprofits. So you can get a good sense of the kinds of jobs that we're recruiting for, what things are paying, and what the language looks like. If it might spark something for you, like, oh, we actually need that. And I didn't know what it was until I read this.
Is there anything, if a friends group is looking for an intern, is there anything that you would suggest that they really think about before they go that route?
Yeah, for me, I always want to make sure that you're prepared for the care and tending of the member, that they're not, you're not hiring a mid-level employee who's, perhaps worked much before or in this capacity. So there is some mentorship and direction that they will need, and I would be prepared to communicate with them and with ACE more than you think you need to. That would be my advice. Ellen, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'd echo that. I think it's really important to have a good idea of the work that you want to get accomplished. I think it's hard when expectations aren't communicated really clearly up front. Just saying let's hire somebody and see what they can get up to doesn't always work out as well as one might hope. So really having specific projects or work to be done in mind before trying to hire somebody in for help, I think is key.
Knowing who the supervisor will be, it's just like it's really hard to have 2 different bosses or 3 different bosses. So you should have one person in the organization who is supervising that member. Not that they can't work with others or get assignments, but there really should be a mentor that they can imprint on and know that they have someone in their corner to go to for help. I would also suggest that. And then just, sometimes it doesn't go well. It's not necessarily like super rare, but it's rare. Sometimes it's just not the right fit. So, if that happens or a member gets a full-time job, things can happen in the middle of it. It doesn't always work out 100% the way you want it. But that is the nature of dealing with young people exploring careers. Sometimes they get different opportunities. Sometimes, just like with any person that you hire, they might be great in an interview and they show up their first day and it's not exactly what you thought. So just keep in mind, they're not, they're young and they're learning. And I find them to, the members that are drawn to ACE or Conservation Corps in general tend to be just mostly amazing young people who we have a lot to learn from, and they have a lot to learn from us too. And I find that they're really open and wanting that. And also, don't be surprised if they get hurt, because they do. So just making sure that you're, if you've got them walking in streams for a day, that they could, fall off a log. We had, I don't know how many members fall off logs last year. It just, young people out in the middle of the woods or in creeks and streams, they fall down and they hurt themselves, and it happens, and we deal with it, and typically they're back up 3 days later and everything's fine, but don't be surprised when it happens.
That's great information. Okay.
Sue, I don't see any more hands. I don't see any more questions in the chat.
Well, I see something. Is it possible to set parameters as to what would happen if the intern decided to leave the position early for whatever reason, be it a job offer or whatever?
Yeah, it happens pretty often. We don't typically necessarily write in a contingency plan to contracts. We just kind of cross that bridge if and when we get to it. Generally, the options are to either, hire somebody new into the position, and we won't charge any extra or add anything on to do a second recruitment. That's just
on us.
Something that happens sometimes. Or, we can say what we were trying to accomplish has more or less been accomplished, and we'll call it a contract at that point. So we're very flexible in that regard, because it does happen. We kind of say that our ideal outcome for members is that they end up with a job with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and sometimes that happens in the middle of their ACE term, but that's all right.
That's good for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
it's all about them getting jobs.
Yeah.
So there's a question in the chat. It says, how much does it cost for working with you all? Seems like we kind of got that, but maybe you have an answer for that?
I think my answer is it depends on what you're hoping to accomplish and the scope of the position. We don't assign a cost, or we don't kind of, our billing structure is entirely based on member weeks. So we're only charging you all if we hire somebody and they start work, and we bill a flat rate for each of their weeks of work. We're not sending bills for recruitment services or anything like that. That's just all rolled into our rate for the member. Does that answer your question, Karen?
Sorry, I don't have a lot of voice at the moment. That's why I'm using the chat. But basically, so there would be a flat rate that would be added on for us, for us and the Fish and Wildlife Service partner, to cover, in addition to the living allowance that we would set for them.
Yes.
Can you give me an example of
Sure. So I'm pulling these numbers out of thin air, so don't hold me to these. But, so say a member's living allowance is $600 a week, and that's what they're getting on their paycheck. ACE may bill, the Friends group $925 a week for that member. So, that's going to cover, that extra $325 a week is going to cover workers' comp, payroll services, the support.
50%.
Yeah, that was a bad number. I'm not good at math that fast. But there's an upcharge on it that covers all of kind of these administrative things that we've talked about that we provide. It would not be a 50% upcharge.
So is there a working percent that you could indicate was typical?
We touched on that a little bit earlier. It's hard to say exactly because it can depend on a number of factors. Our negotiated overhead rate with DOI right now is about 25%. So that's, a decent, very broad ballpark number, but it may be a little different from that, just depending on the circumstances of a given position.
So you're saying that working in this way with a Fish and Wildlife Service partner and or a Friends partner would be similar to the negotiated rate that you have with DOI?
Yeah, we set up that to be able to cover our operating costs as an organization. So it's a decent ballpark.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I'm just trying to be able to relay the fullest picture that I can to the rest of the board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I don't see any more questions. I don't see all the people on my screen. If there's anybody with a hand up, I don't see anybody. So, do you have any?
Do you want to just mention next month's webinar?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going to go.
Oh,
yeah, I just want to say thanks again to Ellen and Jen for their providing us some information to kind of consider working with interns. It does sound very promising, and the information you provided is excellent. We will be providing a copy of the recording and the PDF of the slides and chat for those that are signed up today. And then we'll be posting the webinar recording on the Corfa website as well. So you can go back and look at this again if you have any more questions. And I know that Ellen and Jen will be glad to answer any specific questions you have. And I see she's put their contact information in the chat. And we will provide that with our follow-up message. Great webinar, and save yourself some dates in February, March, and April. February 21st, we'll be talking about social media. In March, on the 20th, we'll be getting a legislative update because a lot of things going on in Washington that we need to know about from a Friends group standpoint. And in April, we're working to get somebody from Fish and Wildlife, hopefully Cynthia Martinez or someone, to talk to us a little bit about what's going on in Fish and Wildlife. So save those dates, February 21st, March 20th, and April. Not sure about that date yet. But thank you for coming today, and we'll see you today.